Now it's time for Glow with Markette Sheppard, a show where talk enlightens and inspires you to glow through life, instead of going through the life, just to get by. Hosted by Emmy award-winning TV host and best-selling author, Markette Sheppard. Listen now for insightful conversations featuring celebrities and thought leaders. Call in to share your story live on air. Are you ready for a glow up? Your journey towards enlightenment starts right now.
That's right. Your journey towards enlightenment and insight on one of the biggest issues of modern times starts right now. We are talking about the Great Resignation. Have you left your job? Are you thinking about leaving your job? Has the pandemic prompted you to rethink what you do for a living? We have an amazing author, speaker, and executive coach with us today to help you dig deep within and answer some questions that have been troubling all of us. Holland Haiis, welcome to Glow with Markette Sheppard.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me here. It's so nice to reconnect with you and to be a guest on your show. So excited.
Absolutely. And we also have the Glowstream TV family here. Cheryl Grant writes TV and film reviews for glowstreamtv.com. Norma Ramirez writes the recovery blog. So many of us are recovering from traumas in life. Norma also handles marketing, and you can find all of the great content she produces on our Instagram page at Glowstream TV. You can find Cheryl's writings at glowstreamtv.com. This is what supports this podcast. So please like, follow, and share. And now let's get into more about the Great Resignation. Holland, I met you a few years ago when you were on tour for your book before the pandemic about how people are obsessed with technology and how it kind of like recalibrates our brain. We can't focus. And little did we know that the pandemic was going to make us so much more connected than ever before, but then disconnected. So let's start with a little bit about your background, and then let's get into how you're helping companies deal with this return to work retention problem that we're all facing and experiencing.
Yes. Well, again, thank you. And a little bit about my background. I have been helping teams and organizations for the last 25 years to really bring their teams to that place of engagement. And as the book is titled, consciously connecting, right? Consciously connecting to what's important to us, consciously connecting to how we are leaders. And of course, the pandemic has really shifted how we view our connection to what it is that we do outside our families as well as inside of our families. And this Great Resignation is this piece about really, do we want to be where we're spending all the time away from home with this company, with this organization, with this group of leaders? Do we view them as leaders? Do we see ourselves as leaders? So it's really an interesting time and a lot of shifting.
It is a lot of shifting. And I noticed in the beginning, there were two types of people, Holland. There were people who they were running the rat race, but it was running them ragged. People with families, with children, maybe an older relative at home. There's lots of people in the sandwich generation where they have children they're taking care of and parents. And then you have this job that you're at minimum 8 hours a day, right? And then you add the commute on top of that. So the pandemic shutdown in March of 2020 was a big pause button, a big break where people could just recenter, recalibrate. And then there are what I call the super employees, right? A lot of them are CEOs and senior executives where maybe they don't have children. If they have children, they have full-time nannies or help. Maybe they never married. Maybe nothing in their house they have to take care of. They don't have plants or pets but themselves. And they live and breathe. They really live for work and work to live. And being at home was isolating for them. Or people who maybe they're just single and you know, they're not the CEO, but being at home isolated them from their social network, and work was a large part of their social network. So you have these two divides. Am I missing anyone, Holland?
Well, to your point, I want to back up for a second and talk about that group that is isolated, which really became so many people, because even if we were at home with a partner or children, we did feel isolated from our lives, our everyday life and what we tend to do. Our friends that we would see, networking events, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're someone that goes to work and has a best friend, it's not the same on Zoom as actually being together. And our brains are wired to be with one another. It's what we need, and it's gone on, right, for thousands of years, is to be together. And so when we are together, we do have more oxytocin, which is that trust and that socially bonding chemical. And we do have more serotonin and dopamine hits. And it's not the same when we're at home and we're experiencing Zoom all day, every day. And we start to feel more disconnected, even though we're in a different type of rat race. We're in a rat race now where we're using technology all day, every day for every meeting. And we weren't getting outside. We weren't getting outside and having physical contact and having those really deep conversations that sometimes we can grab a girlfriend at lunch or a guy friend and we can, or, at coffee, or we might be coming out of a meeting and say, hey, do you have a couple of minutes? I just want to share some ideas. That doesn't happen as much on Zoom. So all of us, regardless of our positioning within an organization, we were all feeling that isolation and that disconnection from our lives, because our lives had been turned upside down, and the normalcy, the ritual and the routine of going to work and the commute for many people, it's about how am I going to engage for the day? What am I going to work on? What project? Oh my gosh, Markette and I'm going to grab her first thing in the morning so that we can, move this along a little bit more. We haven't had an opportunity. And all of that changed with technology. And so we didn't have the start time to the day, the end time to the day, the break to get up, even to go to the restroom. People weren't even doing that, or a drink to go get, an opportunity to go get a glass of water. All of that, we were just sitting for 14 or 16 hours. And then there was the flip side, those that had children at home and elderly parents and what they needed to do, where they felt they couldn't get their work in, and then they were working till midnight and 1 a.m.
Absolutely. And I suspect that is what was fueling the Great Resignation. I am a mother of a 8-year-old. He just turned 8 last week.
Wow.
And when the pandemic started, he was 6 and in kindergarten. And I thought, wow, I mean, gone are the days when I can just go to work and just focus on my job and fully be present, because I've got a 6-year-old who is looking at me like, Mommy, will you play with me? Why can't I go outside or to the playground? And you're right. You do have to wake up early, work on weekends, work at night to get the job done. Would you say that the struggle between the balancing act and being the whole family at home is fueling the Great Resignation?
I think that's part of it. It's definitely part of it. If you live in some of the larger cities, how many of those homes, apartments are really meant, square footage, and really built for having an entire family home all day, every day, working, going to school? That's what drove a lot of people out of cities, is because they really started to, so it was looking at your lifestyle. What are we giving up to be in this city now that we really have to look at it? Before, we were willing to run ourselves ragged, be a part of the hustle culture, and we didn't stop to question ourselves. I think one of the biggest silver linings that we as people, us as humanity, were given was we were forced into a space and a place of pausing in our lives and reflection, which a lot of Americans weren't willing to do. We really weren't willing to give up and question why we were doing what we were doing, because we had FOMO. right? We're always afraid we're going to miss something. So we just keep running and going. And yet we were missing so much because, those ballet recitals, if you looked around the room, people were on devices. And the baseball games, those little league games, I'm sure you looked around and people were on their devices. And we go on vacation and you can look around a pool and people are on their devices. And so, yes, we were still living this great life, but what were we really getting? What was the value add? And so we started to question, what is the value add? What is my lifestyle? Am I living beyond my means and what I want potentially for my lifestyle? Am I pretending that I want something very different? It also gave us an opportunity to look at pay inequity. And gosh, is this the right organization for me? Do they value me as a human being? Do they care about my well-being and my wellness and if I'm burning out? And are they trying to support me? Or is this not the right place for me because I value my self-care? And I didn't realize it for the last 10 or 20 years. And now the pandemic has me realizing I have to make myself important, especially if others aren't. But first and foremost, right, we have to take care of ourselves. And I do want my employer to also be taking care of me. So all of these questions started to happen and we started having different conversations. And, also we have Gen Z who is saying social consciousness. What does this organization believe in? Are plastic straws being used? I mean, we've had those conversations, and that now is this company aligned to me in that effort as well? And are they aligned to me, my leadership, my professional growth and development? Do they bring people such as myself in to offer courses and to help people? Or is this an organization that only cares about the shareholders? So all of this conversation starts happening first here, then we start to look around, we start having these types of conversations, and people start to say, hey, I think it's time for a change.
Yeah, and it inside. That reflection you talked about, Holland, is so important. When you sit still, and a lot of people have been still in their homes, you get in touch with your spirit and what makes your soul, light up. And you're right. People have said, is this a values matchup for me? And one thing that I think is going to be interesting to the Glow Getters, the audience of listeners and viewers on Facebook right now, is you have an inside track to executives. You go into companies, you talk to them about how to plan a thoughtful, intentional return to work strategy or hybrid work strategy, or in some cases, a 100% remote strategy. What are you hearing from executives that maybe the average employee isn't hearing?
It depends on the organization. And I often like to share with an organization that I don't have skin in the game as far as whether you bring your people back full time or whether you're going to go hybrid or whether you're, going to let them work from home every day for the rest of their lives. It's really about looking at your teams and really understanding how to best support them. What is your organization going to look like? What is that blueprint going to look like moving forward? We all know that we had a lot of wasted times in meetings. When it was meeting day or, 3 times a week, how often did people say, oh, yeah, I got this 90-minute meeting? And there wasn't purpose behind a lot of the activities, we'll call them, during the normal workday. And so early on, I had mentioned to some of the companies that I was working with, I said, let's not have everyone on Zoom all day, every day. Let's not do that. We are burning people out. It's too much technology. We blink less when we are on technology, which means, again, our brains are getting tired and we need to hydrate more, and we're not doing that. And so all of this is depleting our energy. And then we just keep pushing more and more. And then we have happy hours after work where people feel required because I'm at home, I'm at home. What else am I doing? Okay, I have to show up for this group activity. And so that was the beginning of me really asking these CEOs and senior leaders, why are we doing what we are doing? And getting crystal clear, why do we need everyone? Because we always did it that way. That's not a great enough purpose post-pandemic and during the pandemic. It wasn't a great enough purpose to say, well, it's just the way we do it.
And are the CEOs being responsive to you?
Some are and some aren't. And again, I think some people are looking at this as a great opportunity to keep top talent and not only retain top talent, to draw even more talent to their organizations. And they're very smart because they're open to having these conversations. They're open to really looking at what is burnout. I spoke to a CEO, I'd say about 6 weeks ago, a very large company, and he said, we don't really have burnout here. He said, we've made more money than we ever imagined through the pandemic. We don't have any burnout. And I sat and I listened. I said, oh, and I said, so you mean to tell me that in any of the meetings or the feedback your senior leaders are getting or you're getting, no one is saying they're overwhelmed. No one is saying they're stressed out. They feel the trauma of this is too much, burned out, they strung out. You're not hearing any of these phrases. He goes, oh yeah. He said, we hear that every day. He goes, but, so I let him finish and I said, well, so your company is telling you, the people are letting you know, and you're not hearing because you're expecting it to look like a certain package. And I said, and the package to you is when you start losing money and 100 people leave or half of your senior leadership team leaves, that's what it looks like to you. And that's yesterday's vision, right? That's what we kind of waited for. I said, so we've got to create a stopgap that doesn't happen. So we have to listen differently, think differently, feel differently, have a different viewpoint where we really start listening to the diversity that we have within the organization. And it cannot just be everyone at the top. We've really got to listen to what's being said.
Ooh, that is so interesting. So a CEO thought because we're making more money than ever before, my team or my staff is doing just fine. And it's not about the bottom line when people's health are at stake. It's not about the bottom line when systems that were in place for decades and hundreds of years have stopped all of a sudden. And I commend you. And I'm so happy there are people like you out there being a liaison between the people and the bosses, because we need that when times are changing and no one really knows what's coming next. So what have you found that works at companies you've seen? What approaches are they taking for someone who may be caught up in the Great Resignation? Either they resigned and they're looking for a new job, or they haven't resigned yet, they're looking for a new job. What are some identifying factors of company policies that our listeners can be on the lookout for?
Well, if you haven't resigned yet, really ask yourself, what is it that's holding you back? And beyond the paycheck, get really clear what's holding you back. If it's just the paycheck, and it can be that, then really look at what would make you happy at this company. Is there something at this company that, drew you in the first place that you feel you're unable to experience that today? What was that drawing card, and who can be your ally? So whether it is, again, someone's senior leadership, whether it's your manager, whether it's someone in HR, where you can approach them and say, hey, I joined this company 10 years ago, and part of what attracted me that I realize is no longer there is there was professional development. there were learning and advancement opportunities. And I don't know if it's me and I've stalled out. I don't know if the company isn't offering this anymore. And I don't know, maybe I've been in a bubble and I didn't see it. So again, you're not giving blame to the company. You're kind of having that shared ownership. I'm not really clear. Can you help me define this? In which case it gives your leader or someone in HR the opportunity to say, well, what specifically are you looking for? And then be very clear. What are you looking for? Do you feel you need an executive coach to help you level up because you'd like to rise in the organization? Do you feel that professional development workshops and courses that used to be brought in 10 years ago that haven't existed in a very long time, maybe you'd like to see that. Maybe you'd like to see a women's leadership group development or a women's something within the company develop. There are a lot of companies that are saying, all right, we want to support women, not only women who are already leaders, women who want to level up, who want to rise up. We want to support that. So we're going to bring in experts to help them. And then having those programs in place very often is something that people want, and it gives them that opportunity not only to level up with skills, it gives them the opportunity. Hey, maybe Markette and I used to just pass each other in the hallway and we kind of know each other. Now we're in this women's leadership group, and I now realize how awesome she is and how I can tap into some of her skill set to help me on projects or to brainstorm with. And oh my gosh, you're blowing my mind. I had no idea. So the opportunities are huge if we start to think about what would we ask for, and being brave as women and even men, but especially as women, to step into that space of owning and coming from your place of power, which comes from your glow. It comes from your consciousness of knowing what you want. It's very hard. You're right. It's hard.
I love this. Yes.
It's hard to ask for what you want when you haven't really given it thought. So put pen to paper and sit down. If I could create the perfect opportunity, because I do feel I like the company, I like my manager, I do like this organization, I have 10 years. If I could create perfection here, what does that look like? Create your list. I'm not saying you're going to get everything on your list. What I'm saying is the organizations right now that value their talent, they're doing everything right, and they want to have these conversations. Give them the opportunity.
Ooh, that is so good. So if you're listening out there, Holland is saying, be clear in your consciousness about what you want out of your career, your present career, and be a partner to your organization, and come to them with some options, and not just me against you, or this is what I don't like. You're saying come with a positivity and clarity of mind where it starts a conversation and it's not a this or that.
Yes, this would make me really happy. And I would feel better about 2 days in the office if our meetings could be structured where we're all here together and we actually share ideas. Would it be possible to do that when we're together? Oh my gosh, you'd be shocked at a simple request such as that. A lot of organizations, this is what I'm going in and helping them cobble together. This is part of the plan, is that they haven't really thought through what is it when we're all together. When we have Norma and Cheryl and Markette and Holland, what are we all going to do? What is the purpose that we all come in every single Wednesday? Oh, it's project day. So we kick off Wednesday morning with a brainstorming meeting, right? We're very clear. We have a clear agenda. We know what our goals are, what we're looking at creating together. Then we go off, have a little time apart. Then we come back and start working on the project with our 4 different skill sets to move this along. Wow. Wednesdays are a favorite day. I love Wednesday. Amazing. Right? And we're not asking, we just keep showing up going, oh, this again. Well, if it weren't, oh, this again, how do you create, oh my gosh, this again? How do you create that?
I love this. And this takes being flexible. It's funny you brought up Norma and Cheryl, and I'd love to bring them into the conversation now because Norma and I just adjusted our meeting schedule. And we talked about, okay, is this effective now? We were meeting so frequently, but we ironed out some wrinkles where we didn't need to meet as much. And now that we figured that part out, we're able to meet less frequently and have more time to do what we both love in our respective lanes. Norma, would you agree?
Yes, and that's one thing I kind of went into this not even knowing like the direction that God had planned for me, but it's the creative freedom. I can just go to I went to Markette and let her know that I was hiding AMC symbols in some of our Instagram posts. And I kind of did it and then let her know about it. And her reaction was like, oh my God, I love it. Let's try it. Let's try it for 3 weeks. So she's so receptive to any ideas that I may have and bring them to the table. And she just nurtures the creativity. So I do have a question with the different companies and stuff that you work with. Do you see burnout more in like a tech field or in the creative field? Like, is there one field that you see burnout more compared to others?
It's a great question, Norma. I'm seeing burnout across the board. And that is because we have got those blurred lines of, again, when are we starting the day? When are we ending the day? And that was the beauty of the commute. So if I can get everyone just to rethink your commute momentarily before you have that knee-jerk reaction of, I hate traffic. And I mean, no one loves traffic. Have you ever met a human that goes, I love sitting in traffic? It's amazing. No one loves it. What it allowed, though, is going into work, it gave you that opportunity to really line your day up, both professionally and personally, right? Knowing today I'm leaving early, there's the soccer game. And so I've got to remind Norma, she'll cover for me, and I've got to forward my phones, or again, whatever the agreement is. It really got us organized, if you will. It was a routine that we had that was a great routine. And then we got to work, we got to the office, and then again, our day unfolded. And then when we left the office, we knew if we had to finish a project that it would maybe be some playing with the kids, then dinner, then bath time, put them down, and I will give it 30 to 45 minutes. And what happened without having those bookends of the day, so to speak, is the blurred line became, and for many, they didn't even have an office. They didn't even have an office within their home, another bedroom. So they were working on the sofa and at the dining room table. And our brain works off of triggers. And so what happens is, just like every time you see this thing, right? What are you triggered to do? You're triggered to.
Okay, we've had Holland pause right there, but hopefully we can get her back. I hope that for you, Norma and Cheryl, you're getting information, because I know that I'm still processing this pandemic and we're almost 2 years into it. Cheryl, do you have questions about this? Are you still processing? Oh my goodness, I was at work, then I was at home, now I'm at work.
Yes, indeed. I mean, this has been such a challenging time. But what I will say, the reason this great escape or this great resignation, I think, came about because of this pandemic. People really sat down and thought, it was a life-threatening situation. And people really came together and thought about how things are different now. Am I happy in my current situation? Do I like my job? Am I getting the right amount of balance, work-life balance? What's missing? And so many people took this opportunity to do things that they enjoy, things that they really like doing. I know for myself, I added writing I enjoy writing, so I added more of that. Of course, when I was working so hard back to back, I didn't give myself that freedom or that space to do that. And after this pandemic and having just a bit of a break, a furlough situation with my job, I took that opportunity to decide, what is it that I really enjoy doing? And I think that's what a lot of people enjoy doing. And I think companies making things more flexible for others, I think that's a really key thing. If people or employers would
think about outside the box and think about how can we make things a lot more easy and give people a little bit more freedom, the job will still get done, but people will probably be happier in their current situation.
Absolutely. You know, I had a break because I realized for the first 3 months of the pandemic, I did not take any time off to process. A break, like you said. And then it's like, okay, what is, and one thing is important, that's important, is connecting with my and understanding my inner spirit, you know, and breaking down my inner dialogue. And out of one of our GLOW meetings, we decided to launch a podcast, right? Sure. I mean, it was awesome. And it was like, what can we do to grow this community? And everybody said, you got to do a podcast. And we did it. And what you're saying, Cheryl, too, is I think employers who allow their employees flexibility to be their whole selves, you know, to be at home and figure this whole, I don't have childcare, but I'm working thing out. And if you're meeting your deadlines, you do have happier employees. And I know when I'm working with people, when they allow me the grace to be a mother when I need to be a mother, you know, or Cheryl to be an aunt when you need to be an aunt, or Norma to be a daughter when you need to be a daughter. I'm like, I'm sticking by this person until the wheels fall off, because I know how valuable that is. And so my thing is, I don't care. I'm not checking for what time you logged in, what time you logged off. All I'm checking for is results at the end of the day. And if you need a nap, from 12, I'm not going to bother you from 12 to 1, as long as the work gets done.
I find that we're more productive, at least for myself. I actually get more done than I did when I was in the office. First of all, take away the travel time, the commute alone. So going and returning home was so much better. I appreciate the time that I have to maybe do some other things during my lunch hour that I may not have been able to do if I were in a physical office. It's just a much better space. But to Holland's point, when she mentioned that we were getting so burnt out, for example, even simple things as virtual meetings during the Zoom, you can tell there's a bit of burnout. Sometimes people don't want to come on camera. You know, they feel stress. It's like, oh, I have to be on camera. So there's a certain pressure there for them to do that. And I think if the company pulled back, as long as you're there, don't make someone necessarily feel bad because they're not showing their face, but they are present. Maybe they're not looking camera ready. So, you know, it's just, you know, those things, especially if you're having those back-to-back meetings. So, you know.
Yeah. No, the back-to-back meetings are so important. I'm glad you brought up the on-camera versus off-camera thing. I think I'm in a good place now where the people who I work with, they say, okay, if it's a public-facing meeting, we all have to be on camera. If it's just us and we meet all the time, Norma and I meet 3 and 4 times a week, we don't necessarily have to be on camera. Or when I am on camera, sometimes you may catch me in my pajamas, but you know, those are very specific meetings. It's also being burnt out from being present and having to look professional through these Zoom meetings, you know, and there's all kinds of pressures that I think if some people enjoy it and they're not feeling the burnout, allow your colleagues the grace and understand that everyone has different levels to which they can function in this new world. And our guest, Holland, has rejoined us through the wonders of technology. She is able to join. And we're just talking about the different levels of burnout and how when employers allow flexibility and grace and a flexible work schedule, maybe the bulk of your work gets done at night. Employees tend to be more loyal and grateful. Would you agree with that, Holland?
Yes, I think we're stepping into a time when an employee now looks at their job a little differently as well. And is it that you want me 8 or 10 hours in a seat, or is it my output? What are we measuring exactly? And for some companies, this is really hard for them to wrap their heads around because they say, well, I want it all because the output equals the 8 or 10 hours in a chair. And some people are saying, well, no, because I'm done with this particular batch of work in 6 hours. I've now, at home, I've pushed myself further and faster. And so I was 6 hours. And so I'd like that 2 hours back to do something else. And so this is becoming, again, a conversation. And I think what has to be taken into account is different industries can offer different flexibilities. I work with a lot of law firms, and, their clients call when they call. And so you've got to be available. You do have to be available for those 8 or 10 hours, whatever that shift looks like. However, what I'm asking some of them to rethink is, can I be available on a walking meeting? Can I be available if I am very familiar with this client and I can answer questions about this particular case or the work? May I be out on a walk with my dog? Do I literally have to be at the desk? And so now it gets others to thinking, perhaps you could be out on a walking meeting. What does that look like? And then my phone rings. It's like, Holland, what does this look like? And I remind people all the time, Richard Branson was really one of the greats and one of the first that talked about walking meetings. And we know that really comes from John D. Rockefeller, who talked about he would walk with his business partner to work down Fifth Avenue every day. And the greatest ideas and the best decisions that were made when they walked to work and when they walked home. And it wasn't necessarily what happened during that 8 hours in the office. So again, it's that flexible mindset.
I think that's so important, as we evolve into this new normal. I remember at the start of the pandemic working with someone who I was accountable to, who said cameras on every meeting, meet 3 times a week, to the point where we didn't have anything to talk about because we met for an hour 3 times a week. The work wasn't progressing that quickly to give updates. And then also someone joined the meeting from a car and they were on their way to drop off something to their niece, and they got berated for it. And I just thought, geez, to sit at home in a seat and look at your computer for 8 to 10 hours, which was what the expectation was, so hard to maintain. And so the result of that particular client was people stopped working with that. People left, and thus I witnessed the Great Resignation in real time. Holland, how long do you think this Great Resignation is going to last? Or has pretty much everyone had the time in the past almost 2 years to reevaluate? And if they did resign, they resigned. Is it now the great hiring or what is the opposite of resignation?
Yes, it is the hiring. I think it's going to be like waves. I think it's, when you stand at the ocean, when are the waves done? I don't know. They get bigger, they get smaller, the tide comes in, the tide rolls out. And I think we're just at the beginning of what's happening. When we think about, again, these wake up calls, and I'll back up for a moment. Remember when I think it was over the summer, when some of the Goldman Sachs, some of those who were more junior at Goldman Sachs went public with the New York Times that said, we're working 90 to 100 hours a week and we're burning out. And the CEO had to step up very quickly so that there wasn't, and again, they were already saying, we're leaving. We can't do this. We're human beings, and we're being pushed even more at home now that we aren't commuting and going to an office. And so I think there will be, that was a big tidal wave, really. I think there will be these swells of water, if you will, that will hit us. And it will be a wake-up call, and then it'll get a little quieter, and then it'll hit another industry. And so really what it comes down to within these companies is taking the opportunity right now to look at what it is that is working really well and what is not. Remembering that all cameras on for every single meeting, all day, every day, it's very exhausting because most people are doing this. They're looking and they're like, oh, geez, Oh boy, it's a bad hair day. Does everybody know it? And then you kind of get this thing, and then it's like,
I'm so glad you said that, because hair is an issue for us ladies.
It's a lot of stress. And so if you are on a lot of Zoom meetings, you can go up to I don't know if a lot of people know this, but the right-hand corner of your square, your picture, you can go up to those 3 little dots. You can click on that and you can hide self-view. It's almost at the bottom of the drop-down window. Now,
I see that now. Yes.
So we're all still going to see you, Markette. We're still going to see you. What it does is it helps to bring the cortisol in the brain. That is the stress hormone. It helps to bring that down, because now every time I speak or every time Markette asks me a question, I've hidden my self-view and I'm less self-conscious that I don't look the way I want to look, or I feel the light is harsh, or I feel it's too dark, or all of these criticisms and judgment really take us out of that space and place of coming together, collaborating, co-creating, connecting, communing, supporting. It's taking us away from that. So hide your self-view. That really helps.
I just did that. That is such a huge tip. Okay, Holland, for Cheryl and Norma who are here and they're part of the Glowstream TV fam, this is important what you're saying about you're looking at yourself all day, every day for the first time. Yes. Back when we were in the office, one thing I do miss is sitting around the table and having meetings and not really looking at myself and being self-conscious, but looking at my colleagues, being able to read their body language, having the group lunches and things like that. That's one thing I miss about being around people every day. And can we talk a little bit about your book and how the brain, when it's looking at a device, it takes time to kind of calibrate and process when you're multitasking and you're switching off in between things. So there's like a real effect to your psyche happening here.
So a couple of things. First of all, when we are multitasking between devices, to be really clear, and I know, again, there'll be that knee-jerk response because women are like, I'm a great multitasker. I mean, I used to wear that badge with honor. Did we not all, ladies, did we not all wear that badge with honor? Yeah. And we really don't multitask. It's a myth. It's a fable. It doesn't exist. What you are doing is you're task switching. So you're going from this task over to this task, back to the meeting, back to the email, back to the meeting, back to the email. And what you're doing is you're tiring out your brain from constantly switching one task to the next. And if you think about, our brains can't really keep up with that. We think they can. When is the last time you sat on the sofa, watched either a television show or a movie while reading a book? Think about that for a second. And when your child, your partner then says, oh my gosh, I'm so scared. And you're like, what? And they're like, she's going to jump out and dig the axe. And you're like, oh, and you're relaxed because you've been into the book, because your brain can't really be focusing on two things at once. Or you're paying attention to the movie, you're screaming because, again, the axe, and she's going to jump out from the door. And what are we going to do? And then you go, wait a minute, Susan, who's Susan? When did she come into that? And you got to go back 10 pages, 15 pages, and you're like, wait, they walked down the path to the beach. What? There's a beach now? Hold on. And you're backing up because we can't do two things simultaneously in that way with our brains. And so what happens is we're putting ourselves in brain fog and we're wearing ourselves out. So by 10 in the morning, if this is your behavior, you already feel spent for the day. And yet what happens is every time we go to these beautiful devices, and yes, I love mine too, we're getting those dopamine hits when we check social media, and we're getting a dopamine hit to go back to our email inbox. It's kind of like running out to the mailbox every day when we were kids. Did I get that? Did I get that check from grandma? Did I get that postcard?
But it's an email. Did I get that email I'm waiting for? Did I get that?
Is that contract in? Do they want me? Right? And so we keep checking, and we're training our brains to keep getting these dopamine hits. And so again, we're pulling ourselves further and further away from that opportunity to do that deeper work that we all need to do. We all need to dig into that well of creativity to really come up with best ideas, best strategies, bring our best to the group. We're not only doing a disservice to the group and the organization, we're doing a disservice to ourselves, because then we hit frustration much quicker. We get more reactionary. We get a little snippy, a little short with people. And then we're like, what is she talking about? What? There's nothing wrong with me. And again, we're driving ourselves to doing too much. So set one aside. Mine is you can't hear it. It won't vibrate right now. It's just here, turned over, and then pay attention to what you're doing. And when the meeting ends, then go to the device and check what you need to check, as opposed to this ping pong game that is just tiring your brain out.
And let me just say, the book is called Consciously Connecting, a simple process to reconnect in a disconnected world. But we are connected, but disconnected. And Norma and Cheryl, what are your reactions to that? Did you believe you were multitasking all along? Or did you know, hey, wait, I'm just ping-ponging here?
I did think I was multitasking. I sort of prided myself in being able to multitask. I thought, especially now with the phone and being here at home, working remotely and trying to check email, looking at my phone, I may get another phone call on my landline. And so just doing all these different kinds of things. Yeah, I did think I was multitasking. But as you mentioned, Holland, you do have to sort of just set some things aside. I do find that I'm much better at trying to just do one thing at a time, just to try to even things out. I don't feel as stressed. It's a little different working remotely than in an office, as you mentioned. It's a lot different. And you are correct when you feel like you're anchored in one spot. You're almost afraid to get up from the laptop. What if they call? We use Teams for my job. And if they're calling you on Teams, I may have gone into the kitchen real quick just to grab a snack, so I feel if I'm not there right at that moment, they may get the impression, well, what is she doing? Is she not really working? But in all honesty, I just no different than if I got up at my desk. If I were at work, maybe I went around to the break room or something like that. But it's not the same because you're in the same constant environment for the duration. Is it okay? I have a question that I wanted to ask Holland, if that's okay. Holland, I wanted to ask, it's surrounding the holidays. The holidays are right around the corner. What can companies do to support employees and make them feel valued during the holiday season?
That's so great. A lot of companies, such a great question. So many companies are having the conversation, Cheryl, of how do we celebrate? How do we have celebrations? And we're coming up to the holidays, and there's usually a holiday party of sorts. And what I am saying to groups is, and again, these companies, why wouldn't you do what you've done before? You have these policies and protocols, and there are certain mandates in place for if you went to a restaurant in other years. The difference is this year, you have to wear a mask. Again, depending on the state, some states, when you get up from the table to go to the restroom, you have to wear a mask. Well, you do that when you go out with your family. So it wouldn't be any different with your coworkers. So it's a great opportunity to, again, come together in the celebratory way that we remember, that we love, that we looked forward to. And again, not pressuring those that are not ready. We have to be so sensitive because this has been, we're calling it a pandemic. It's been a worldwide trauma. And everyone has experienced this trauma in a different way. For some people, it's been a one. For others, they have lost family members. They did not get to have funerals. They are isolated because they don't have partners or children. And so for them, it's been a 10. And we have to be willing, to honor each person where they are on their journey. So if we're having this holiday get together, and we can do it smaller. I've suggested to some organizations, let each team decide what they want to do. and how they want to do it. Maybe they're afraid to come together with 200 people. Let's honor that. If it's a team of 15 or 20, then they can have a certain amount of dollars that would normally go for this other large celebration, and let them do what they want. And maybe they want to have a lunch, or maybe they want to, come in for half a day and then go to a festive lunch and then go home. Maybe some still want a dinner. Again, get people in the conversation, because different groups will want something different. And I want to know that you're listening to me. That is so valuable right now. I'm going to stay and be a loyal employee when I know that you care enough to ask me, and know that, I'm vaccinated, but I'm afraid because my mom and dad live with me and they haven't been out, and I don't want to get them sick. And even though I'm vaccinated, 200 people, it's too much. I would love to see my team of 20, but not 200. Okay, you know what? Then let's do our team of 20. Let's respect and let's honor, and again, celebrate in different ways, and yet still celebrate.
That is such good advice. You mentioned the importance of community. And what I'm hearing, Holland, is that part of being in a community is hearing the different perspectives. And so many times as leaders, we're taught that make a firm, definitive decision. That's what leaders do. But in times of trauma, especially, sometimes it's about getting buy-in from your employees, hearing different thoughts. That's also a part of being a leader. I want to go back to what you said earlier about this Gen Z group of employees at JP Morgan Chase, but across industries, who said, this isn't working for me. And they were a part of that early wave of the Great Resignation. Do they go and find new jobs? Did they go and become a part of the gig economy? How do they explain their exit to a new employer they are trying to court? Or maybe there's someone listening who has that question too. Well, I was in this tough situation, or I was burned out, and now I'm ready to go back. How do you explain that?
So how you explain that, and yes, there are some, so let's do this in two parts. So there are some who said, you know what, it's time to regroup. Some went home to live with their parents. And by the way, I want to be super clear, there's no shame in that, because I know people in their 40s who went home and said, you know what, I'm going to regroup. I'm going to go back to where I came from. I'm going to be with my parents. I'm going to decide, do I want a house here? Do I want to do something there? What is important to my family and my needs? So this has been the beauty of this recalibration, if you will, and this opportunity to reconnect to your own values and what's important to you. So some went home. Some moved on, realizing that they didn't love this particular industry. They knew that while there may be pulling back in this industry now, it will rev up again. It's the way that certain industries are built for now. Some stayed, and they're more communicative with their needs, which is great, because we always want to do that. And so it was a little bit of everything. How this looks moving forward, and I have worked with a lot of executives on this as well in coaching, because there were some that were so burned out, they stepped away, and they were early adapters to leaving, if you will, and resigning. And then they said, Holland, how am I going to explain, at my age, they're in their 40s, 50s, early 60s, how do I explain this gap? And what I want everyone to think of is, what were you doing during that gap that is applicable to employment? So if you decided to take that gap to focus on your children and supporting your children and your children's needs, and you had 3 or 4 children, then what you can do is talk about your organizational skills. And you can talk about, right, because let me tell you, that's running a team. That is running a team. And as women, we forget that when you are running a household, when you are carpooling, when you are working with kids on homework and violin lessons and ballet and all of these other things that go on in a child's life, you're running a team.
You're chief operating officer. And let me tell you, the team can get unruly.
That's right. That's right. When you got 3 little boys in the back seat and they're all, I want to go to McDonald's after the soccer game. And you're like, oh, Lord, not McDonald's, right? So yes, and women forget to say, hey, I was doing this. Yeah.
We have 1 minute left in the show. This has been such a great conversation, Holland. I could probably talk to you for 2 hours. I'm just glad I got this one virtual hour with you. I would love to tell our listeners and everyone who's subscribed. I think we're over 700 subscribers in just a short time since we launched. We love you, and we want our audience to find out more about you and your book and how they can overcome if they or someone they love have been affected by this great resignation.
Yes. Well, reach out to me. I have a website. It is my name. So you've seen it in my little Zoom square. You've seen it behind me. It is.
And for the podcast listeners on iTunes, just tell them your.
For the podcast, you would type in Holland, HOLLAND, HAII. That's 2 I's. SLikeSam.com. That'll take you to my website. You can reach out to me. I am happy to offer all of those who are listening today a complimentary check-in for 15, 20 minutes just to help you recalibrate the best that I can, because I know what it's like to struggle. And I want to support all of those of you who want to glow even more, who are Markette fans and fans and followers of Cheryl and Markette and Norma and that family, because you're doing amazing work. So thank you for having me and giving me this opportunity to share.
I love it. Thank you so much, Holland. You are a bright light for all of us professional glow getters out there. We're out of time. I just want to toss it to Norma. She has a new blog coming out tomorrow. Norma, can you just tell us in 30 seconds what we can expect from you? I know you're an AMC movie lover, but you also write this amazing blog.
And I am an AMC shareholder.
That's right.
It's going to basically be probably like a little play on words here and there, comparing dating and dating in the stock market again, but geared more towards women. And I'm also going to include some of the images from our Instagram page where I've been strategically hiding the AMC symbol to kind of give people something to look at besides their portfolios all day, every day. So that's what it's going to be. And I'm going to include what I shared with you guys earlier about when I told Markette and how she reacted, which was really awesome. And she's so receptive to any kind of ideas. So it'll just be that.
Thank you so much. I love working with you, Norma. I love working with Cheryl. Holland, you have been so amazing. I'm all about community and collaboration. So when I find good people like Norma and Cheryl, I just I'm like, okay, how do we keep the productivity going? And how do we value you and help you grow and have fun? Because so many people just work because they have to. Find the joy in your life. Don't just go through life. Glow through life. And on that note, I have to wrap. Thanks for joining us, and please come back next week for an all-new episode of Glow with Markette Sheppard.